My name is Charlotte Reed. To the outside world, I am the woman who has it all. A corner office on the 25th floor, a skyline view that glitters every night, and a reputation for being unshakable. I wear silk blouses that flow like water against my skin, heels that click with purpose, and a smile that convinces everyone I've never tasted bitterness. But that smile, it hides teeth once broken. Tonight, the city looks alive beneath me, streets glowing with headlights, people rushing toward their own stories. I swirl the last sip of red wine in my glass, enjoying the quiet hum of success that wraps around me like velvet. And then, my phone buzzes against the marble counter. A name flashes across the screen. One I thought I'd buried under years of silence.
Mom.
My chest tightens. I don't answer, but her voicemail arrives seconds later, her voice sharp even through the machine. Charlotte, we need to talk. Your father's not well. He wants to see you. My fingers tremble against the glass. For years, I told myself their voices couldn't reach me anymore. That laughter couldn't echo past the scars on my jaw or the memory of being called useless. But hearing her now, it's like the walls of this elegant apartment shrink in on me. I close my eyes, inhaling slow, the scent of roses from the vase behind me mixing with the iron memory of blood.
They want to see me.
After everything, I whisper to myself, almost like a warning. Don't forget where you came from, Charlotte. Don't forget what they did. I was 16 the night my world cracked open. Our house was small, the kind of place where secrets had nowhere to hide. The living room always smelled faintly of my dad's cigarette smoke and my mom's cheap lavender spray that never really covered it. I remember standing by the chipped coffee table, clutching my algebra textbook to my chest like it was armor. I don't want to stay here forever, I said, my voice shaking but determined. I want to go to college. I want to make something of myself. My dad lowered the newspaper he was pretending to read. His jaw tightened, the vein in his temple throbbing. College, he spat. For what? You'll drop out, just like everything else you start. You're useless, Charlotte. A burden. My mom's lips curled into a smirk, like she'd been waiting for this. Listen to your father. You can't even cook a proper meal without burning it. You really think you're cut out for more? The word useless sliced through me sharper than any blade. My chest burned, and I fought the lump in my throat. I'm not useless. I'm not staying here and living like. I didn't finish. The crack of his fist against my jaw silenced me. White light exploded in my head. I stumbled back, the taste of blood filling my mouth, metallic and bitter. My knees buckled against the coffee table as my textbook slipped from my hands. And then the laughter. My mom laughed. Not nervously. Not out of shock. She laughed like it was a punchline she had been waiting for. That's what you get for talking back, she sneered. That's what you get for being useless. I wanted to disappear, to melt into the worn-out carpet beneath me. My hands shook as I touched my face, my jaw throbbing with pain that spread all the way to my ears. Tears blurred my vision, but I forced myself not to let them see me cry. That night, when the house finally fell silent, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. My cheek was swollen, my lips split, but what hurt most wasn't physical. It was the echo of her laughter. On the nightstand beside me sat the small silver locket my grandmother had given me before she passed. Inside was a note she'd handwritten. You are more than what they see. I clutched it until my knuckles turned white. That was the night I made a promise, one no one heard but me. I would leave. I would become more. And one day, they would see exactly who I was. Leaving home wasn't a dramatic scene with bags packed under the moonlight. It was quieter, more desperate. At 17, I slipped out with nothing but a duffel bag, a stack of community college brochures, and my grandmother's locket pressed against my chest. I didn't even say goodbye.
I didn't know them that.
The first year was brutal. I worked nights at a diner, balancing trays heavier than my arms could handle. The smell of grease clung to my hair, and my feet ached so badly I'd sometimes cry in the restroom between shifts. During the day, I sat in cramped classrooms, surviving on vending machine coffee and determination. There were nights I questioned everything. Nights when my bank account mocked me with $7.42, when I wondered if maybe my parents had been right. Maybe I was useless. But then I'd reach for that locket, flip it open, and remind myself, you are more than what they see. One winter morning, I met someone who would change everything. Her name was Dr. Evelyn Ross, one of my professors. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, with streaks of silver in her dark hair and a voice that carried authority without cruelty. She noticed me lingering after class, half asleep, half defeated. "You work nights, don't you?" she asked. I nodded, embarrassed. She studied me for a moment, then said, "You have grit. Don't waste it." Dr. Ross became more than a professor. She became a mentor, guiding me through internships, recommending me for scholarships, and reminding me that intelligence without resilience is just potential left to rot. The road was still steep. I failed classes, picked myself back up, and failed again. I learned to code at night, built small websites for local shops, and turned $50 projects into rent money. Slowly, painfully, I climbed. By 22, I had my first real client, a small startup that couldn't afford much, but believed in me. The day that paycheck hit my account, I sat in my studio apartment and cried harder than I had the night my father hit me. Because this time, the tears weren't from pain. They were from proof. I never told my family. On social media, I stayed vague. A picture of coffee, a blurry sunset, captions like "busy day." No details, no bragging. They didn't deserve to know how far I was climbing. Success, I learned, is sweeter when it's yours alone. By 25, I'd built a small design firm with 2 employees who felt more like sisters. By 28, my name was quietly appearing in industry magazines, the kind people like my parents never read. And by 30, I owned the office with the skyline view. But none of it came without scars. Every contract signed, every late night spent chasing deadlines, it was me fighting against the ghost of that laughter. Against useless. Against the memory of blood on my teeth. I never went back. I never called. Until now. And suddenly, with that voicemail, the fortress I built feels like it has a crack in its walls. I didn't agree right away. I let the voicemail sit for days, replaying it only when I felt brave enough to hear my mother's voice without flinching. But eventually, something inside me said it was time. Not for them, for me. I needed to face the ghosts I'd been running from. So I invited them. Not to dinner. Not to some neutral cafe. But to my office. The morning they were supposed to arrive, I made sure everything looked perfect. The glass walls gleamed, sunlight pouring in like gold. The polished oak floors reflected the city skyline, and the air smelled faintly of fresh lilies arranged in vases near the reception. My assistant, Grace, gave me a quick nod, sensing the storm that was about to walk through the door. At exactly 11 a.m., the elevator chimed. Out stepped my mother first, her hair shorter now, but her eyes just as sharp. Behind her was my father, slower, heavier, a cough rattling in his chest. For a moment they froze. The reception area alone looked nothing like the daughter they once called useless could ever belong to. "Charlotte?" my mother asked, her voice clipped, as if testing whether this was real. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I gestured for Grace to lead them into the main conference room, a space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a long mahogany table. On the walls hung framed awards, magazine covers, and photographs of moments that shaped my journey. Me on stage at a tech summit, me shaking hands with investors, me and my small team celebrating our first $1 million contract. My parents' eyes darted from one photo to another, their silence growing heavier with each step. Finally, I walked in. My heels clicked against the floor, echoing in the vast room. I didn't sit. I stood at the head of the table, the skyline burning behind me like a crown I'd earned. "This," I said, my voice steady, "is my company. My name is on every contract, every building lease, every paycheck. I built this." My father's mouth opened, then closed again. He looked smaller than I remembered, deflated. My mother, however, tried to recover, forcing a smile. "Well, we always knew you'd do something with your life." I laughed, a sound that carried no humor.
No.
You didn't. You told me I was useless. You laughed when I was bleeding. Do you remember that? Her face paled, but she didn't answer. The silence stretched until my father finally muttered, We didn't mean. You did mean it. I cut in sharply. And you were wrong. I let the weight of those words sink in as they looked around the room once more. My mother's hands fidgeted with the strap of her purse. My father avoided my eyes entirely, staring down at the polished table as though it might give him an escape. I leaned forward slightly, my voice dropping to a calm, deliberate tone. I didn't invite you here for apologies. I didn't invite you here for reconciliation. I invited you because you needed to see me, the daughter you tried to break, the girl you called useless. She's the woman who signs checks bigger than your annual income ever was. She's the woman who owns this building. The shock in their faces was the justice I had imagined for years. Not revenge, just truth, revealed in its purest form. For the first time in my life, the silence belonged to me, and I let it linger until they squirmed. My father cleared his throat, the sound rough and broken. Charlotte, I'm sick. The doctors say my lungs aren't good. We need help. There it was. Not an apology. Not remorse. A request. My mother quickly added, We didn't come here to fight. We came because you're our daughter. And family sticks together, no matter what. I let out a slow breath, my nails tapping lightly against the table. Family? The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Tell me, where was family the night you laughed while I bled, Mom? Where was family when you told me I was worthless, Dad? Neither of them spoke. Their silence was confession enough. I straightened, letting the power of the moment settle into my bones. For years, I had been the trembling girl with a swollen jaw. But today, I was the woman with choices. And they needed me more than I needed them. I'm not heartless, I said finally. But I won't hand out forgiveness like a free sample. If you want my help, there will be conditions. Strict ones. My mother's eyes narrowed. Conditions? Yes. My voice was firm, but calm. If I pay for your treatments, Dad, you will attend therapy. Not just for the sickness eating your lungs, but for the sickness in your heart. You will face what you did to me. He shifted uncomfortably, but didn't argue. I turned to my mother. And you, if you want any relationship with me, you will volunteer. Every week. At a women's shelter. You will sit across from girls who feel broken the way I once did, and you will help them instead of tearing them down. Her lips parted, outrage flickering in her eyes. That's ridiculous. I don't have time for. Then you don't have me, I interrupted sharply. She snapped her mouth shut. For once, she was speechless. I leaned back slightly, my voice softer but unyielding. If either of you want a place in my life, you will accept these terms. No excuses, no shortcuts. Because I refuse to let you drag me back into the cycle you built. I am not your punching bag. I am not your scapegoat. I am Charlotte Reed, and I set the rules now. The silence in the room shifted. For years, their power had filled the air like smoke.
But now it was gone.
The only authority here was mine. My father nodded slowly, eyes glassy with something that almost looked like regret. I'll do it, he whispered. My mother hesitated longer, her pride fighting her survival. But when she glanced around at the walls of my empire, even she knew the truth. Her control was gone. Fine, she muttered, almost choking on the word. I gave a single nod. Then we understand each other. I stood, my heels echoing across the floor as I walked to the window. The city stretched wide before me, alive and endless, a reflection of the life I built from ashes. Behind me, my parents sat small, diminished, bound not by my forgiveness, but by my terms. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one begging. Weeks passed after that meeting, and for the first time in decades, the silence between us wasn't absolute. My father began treatment. True to his word, he also began therapy. Grace, my assistant, would sometimes hand me updates, a receipt from the counseling center, a quiet note that he'd gone again this week. It didn't erase what he'd done, but it showed effort. And for a man who once thought fists were a language, that was something. My mother resisted, of course. Volunteering at a women's shelter wasn't in her nature. The first few visits, she came home bitter, calling the girls pathetic. But slowly, I started hearing something different. Stories of women who reminded her of me. Stories she couldn't laugh at. And though her pride cracked only in small, jagged lines, I saw the beginnings of change. I didn't rush it. I didn't demand perfection. Growth, I learned, is not instant. It's a stubborn seed pushing through concrete, one painful inch at a time. One night, long after the city had gone quiet, I sat in my office with just the desk lamp glowing. The locket lay open in my palm, its silver edges worn from years of clutching it during storms. My grandmother's words stared back at me in her looping handwriting. "You are more than what they see." I smiled through the sting in my eyes. She had been right. I was more than broken bones, more than cruel laughter, more than the word useless. I was proof that survival can become strength, that silence can become a voice, that pain can shape power. When I finally met my parents again, it wasn't in my office, but in a quiet cafe downtown. My father looked tired but gentler, as though the weight of his choices had finally settled on him. My mother's hands shook when she lifted her coffee, but her eyes, still sharp, held something I never thought I'd see: humility. We spoke, not as enemies, not as strangers, but as people inching toward repair. I didn't forgive them fully, not yet. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't a gift I owed. It was a bridge they would have to build, plank by plank. But I wasn't that trembling girl anymore. I was the woman who owned her life, her choices, her voice. And for the first time sitting across from them, I didn't feel small. As I left the cafe, I touched the locket one last time and whispered a promise to myself. I am more, and I always will be.